The sun, a molten disk, bled into the horizon, staining the vast canvas of the desert sky in shades of bruised plum and burning tangerine. Within the cool, insulated quiet of the desert safehouse with portable money counter humming, you traced the rim of a chipped ceramic mug, the warmth seeping into your calloused palm. The rhythmic whir of the machine, a constant, low thrum, was the only counterpoint to the profound silence that otherwise defined your existence here. It was a sound that once signified a different life, a different currency, a life you'd painstakingly dismantled and rebuilt, brick by solitary brick, far from the siren call of sirens and the glare of city lights. Dust motes danced in the last sliver of amber light filtering through the reinforced window, illuminating the starkness of your surroundings. A steel desk, a single cot, a shelf stacked with dog-eared paperbacks, and a tactical bag slung over a chair. This was your sanctuary, or perhaps, your carefully constructed prison. Years had etched deeper lines around your eyes, Seth. Lines not solely from the desert sun but from the ghosts that whispered in the quiet hours, ghosts from the case that had stripped you bare, leaving nothing but a hollow echo where your reputation once stood. The whispers spoke of failure, of a shadow that slipped through your fingers, leaving a trail of grief and unanswered questions. They spoke of the last victim, a name etched into your memory like a brand. A sudden, sharp vibration shattered the stillness. Your hand instinctively went to the source, an old, prepaid burner phone, vibrating on the desk beside a stack of neatly bundled cash. You rarely used it. Fewer still knew the number. The screen glowed with an unfamiliar incoming call. Your brow furrowed, a ripple of unease disturbing the practiced calm of your solitude. You let it ring twice, then 3 times. The insistent buzz a stark contrast to the money counter's steady drone. Finally, with a sigh that carried the weight of 1,000 reluctant decisions, you answered. "Yeah," you said. Your voice a low rasp, unused to anything beyond your own thoughts. A voice, tight, with a strained professionalism you recognized instantly, cut through the line. It belonged to an old colleague, someone you hadn't spoken to in years, someone who, by all rights, should have forgotten your existence. "Is that really you?" The voice was hesitant, then urgent. "Look, I know you're gone, but something's happened. Something you need to see." You leaned back in your chair, the worn leather groaning softly beneath your weight. The money counter continued its monotonous count, each bill a silent testament to your retreat. The desert heat suddenly felt like a physical pressure. Another one, same signature, almost identical. He was found her this morning, out by the old industrial park, near the highway access point. The words hit you like a physical blow. Each syllable a hammer stroke against the carefully constructed walls of your indifference. Same signature. The phrase echoed, conjuring images you'd spent years trying to bury. "Describe it," you demanded, the rasp in your voice replaced by an abrupt edge, a forgotten sharpness. Your knuckles whitened as you gripped the phone. There was a pause, a ragged breath on the other end. He was posed, sat, just like the others. Avoyan, no, Strabel, dressed in a white garment, something old, like a burial shroud, and the symbol, etched into the ground beside her. The same damn symbol. The air thickened, growing heavy with the unspoken past. You closed your eyes, picturing it. The precise placement of the body, the meticulous attire, the archaic symbol, a twisted knot of lines and angles that had baffled every expert, every profiler. It was the calling card of the Phantom, the killer who had eluded you, who had cost you everything. College student. Wopo. Her name was irrelevant. Seth. The scene is the message. It's up where someone mimicking him perfectly. But no one knew those details. Not all of them. The colleague's voice cracked with a despair that mirrored your own. A despair that had been your constant companion for years. The isolation, the quiet, the careful detachment, all of it was crumbling. The killer you had failed to catch years ago had returned. A profound weariness settled over you, heavy as the desert night. You had sworn off the hunt, buried your badge and your ambition in the shifting sands of your self-imposed exile. But the ghost of the past, the ghost of your failure, had just materialized, demanding your attention. "Send me everything," you finally said, the words tasting like ash in your mouth. Every detail, every photograph, every report. Your resolve, long dormant, began to stir, a flicker of the old fire in the ashes of your career. This wasn't just a new case, it was a direct challenge, a gauntlet thrown at your feet, demanding you pick it up. The hunt, it seemed, was back on. The air, thick moments ago with the phantom scent of old dust and dried blood, now carried only the dry, metallic tang of currency. You had closed your eyes, a futile attempt to unsee the precise placement of the body. The meticulous sudden, sharp rap against the reinforced steel door shattered the fragile piece. The sound reverberated through the corrugated metal walls, a jarring intrusion that felt utterly alien to the secluded pocket of silence. You froze, breath held, the rhythmic whirring of the counter suddenly an irritating drone. Not anymore. The desert stretched for miles, an unforgiving guardian against unwelcome visitors. Another series of knocks, more insistent this time, punctuated by a voice, muffled but distinct, calling your name. Seth, your jaw tightened. Old habits, long dormant, stirred within you. You moved with the practiced economy of motion, silencing the money counter, its sudden cessation leaving an echoing void. Your hand brushed against the cool, worn grip of the pistol tucked beneath the stacked ledgers on your makeshift desk. It wasn't a threat. Not yet, but a silent promise of readiness. Through the narrow, reinforced slit of the viewing port, you saw him. The detective, his face, etched with the familiar lines of stress and too many sleepless nights, was a stark reminder of the life you had shed like an unwanted skin. You didn't open the door. You simply watched, your gaze unyielding. Seth, he called again, his voice carrying a tremor of desperation now. I know you're in there. Please? It was an old system, crackling with disuse, designed for distance and anonymity. My talking days are over. He sighed, a sound heavy with resignation. This isn't about the old days, Seth. Not directly. It's about a new one. You tried to dismiss it, to wall yourself off from the world here represented. That's your job now, not mine. It's like yours, Seth. Too much like yours. His voice dropped, imbued with a gravity that cut through your carefully constructed indifference. The same tableau, the same reverence. Only this time, it's a prominent architect. He was found in his own studio, posed like the Lamentation of Christ, the Mantegna version you remember, with the foreshortened body, the exaggerated feet, the weeping figures. The words struck you with the force of a physical blow. The Lamentation of Christ, Mantegna, the specific, morbid artistry. It was a detail so obscure, so precise, it could not be coincidence, or perhaps had never truly left, merely slumbering. Down to the last folded drape, the precise angle of the head, the way the hands are clasped, even the faint scent of myrrh, just like the others. Myrrh, the ancient, aromatic resin traditionally used in embalming and funerary rituals. Another detail, too specific, too macabre, to be anything but a deliberate echo. Your own resources. Because no one else saw it, Seth. Not like you did. They saw a bizarre murder. I saw a ghost. He paused, letting the implication hang heavy in the air. They're calling it a copycat, a deranged admirer. But I remembered your files. The way you insisted it was more than just a madman, that it was a message, a performance. You remembered the scorn, the dismissals, the slow erosion of trust. Your theories, once cutting edge, had become the ravings of a man obsessed. They won't listen to me, Seth. The detective continued, his voice cracking slightly. Not fully. Not when I mention the historical references, the specific iconography. They think I'm reaching. But you understood. You spoke their language. He was right. You had delved into the archives of art history, religious iconography, and ancient burial rites, trying to understand the killer's twisted lexicon. You had seen patterns where others saw only chaos, a macabre narrative unfolding through each victim. And it had cost you everything. I'm out, you stated, your voice flat, devoid of emotion. That life is over. Is it, Seth? He was working on a project, a major restoration of the old downtown cathedral. He had access to historical blueprints, obscure texts, things that might resonate with our artist. A cathedral, obscure texts. The tendrils of the past tightened their grip. Your mind, despite your fierce resistance, began to spin, connecting the dots, mapping the potential pathways. Thorne's profession, his current project, it wasn't just a random victim. The killer was evolving, or perhaps simply continuing a decades-long narrative, selecting victims whose lives somehow intertwined with the grand, macabre tapestry he wove. I can't help you, you said, but the conviction in your voice had wavered. They want answers, and they know you were the one who got closest last time. Before the hum of the desert safe house had been a lullaby, a shield. You imagined the scene, the architect, an intellectual, a creator reduced to a morbid sculpture, a testament to a killer's twisted vision. The same vision that had consumed you. You stared at the detective through the narrow slit, his eyes pleading, weary, but also holding a glint of the old respect, the recognition of a shared burden. He wasn't just asking for help. He was offering a chance at redemption, however tainted. The original reports, the new scene photos, Thorne's background. In a car, you hesitated, then reached for the heavy bolts. You were stepping back into the labyrinth, knowing full well it might be the last step you ever took. The steel door groaned open, revealing the blinding glare of the desert sun and the stark reality of the world you had abandoned. The heavy bolts scraped against their housings, a sound of metallic protest in the otherwise silent desert night. The relentless thrum of the machine, counting phantom stacks, had been your constant companion, a rhythmic lullaby to a life of calculated withdrawal. You didn't step out immediately. The labyrinth awaited, but first, you needed to arm yourself with ghosts. Your hand found the hidden panel beneath a loose floorboard, the wood groaning softly as it yielded. Inside, a heady, canvas-bound box, its contents smelling of aged paper and forgotten sorrows. Your past, meticulously cataloged, weighed in your grip. You carried the box to the scarred metal table that served as your command center, the surface cool beneath your fingertips fingertips. File folders, brittle with age, spilled across the table like autumn leaves, each one a fragment of a life cut short, a piece of the puzzle that had shattered your own. The victims' faces, stark in black and white, stared up at you from glossy photographs. The same vacant eyes, the same precise, chilling tableau of their final moments. The one that had become a tombstone for your career, a monument to your failure. The scent of stale coffee and fear clung to these documents. You remembered the desert wind then, too, whipping around the crime scenes, erasing footprints, scattering potential clues like sand. But the killer, oh, the killer had been meticulous. A signature so subtle, so interwoven with the environment, it had been deemed accidental. An illusion of nature's cruelty, masking human malice. You remembered the news report, the detached voice of the anchor recounting the new horror. The echoes had been immediate, visceral. A tremor through the carefully constructed piece of your exile. The details, sparse as they were in the broadcast, had struck a familiar chord, a dissonant note in the quiet symphony of your retreat. The placement of the body, the specific, almost ritualistic, arrangement of the scene. Too similar. Horrifyingly so. Your fingers brushed over a particular photograph from the original case. A close-up of the victim's left hand. Beneath the manicured nails, almost imperceptible, was a fine, reddish-brown dust, a microscopic residue the forensics team had struggled to identify definitively. Organic particulate matter, the report had concluded, vague and unsatisfying. You had always felt it was more. A signature, a silent declaration. You needed current information, unofficial, unsanctioned. You retrieved a satellite phone from a shielded compartment, its metallic casing cool against your palm. The contact list was short, curated over years of necessity. So, the captain's voice, raspy with age and exhaustion, held a grudging respect, a weary understanding. Thought you were gone for good. The desert has a way of returning lost things. You replied, your voice gravelly. I heard about the new one, the desert. And no, it's not official. You know that, but I figured you'd call. It's too close, isn't it? Tell me what they're not telling the news, you urged, leaning forward, the hum of the money counter a low thrum beneath your urgency. Body found yesterday, dawn break, same damn tableau, remote, isolated, the positioning, the lack of struggle, almost irreverence, some of the younger ones are saying, but there's something. A reddish ground particulate, same as your old case, but this time it was only on the right hand, the left was clean, impeccable, like it had been wiped, or never touched the ground. The captain's words hum in the air, a sudden, piercing clarity in the dusty quiet of the safehouse. The original report, the vague, organic particulate matter. You had dismissed the specific location then, focused on its mere presence. But the absence now, the deliberate cleanliness of one hand, painted a new picture. This wasn't just a reenactment. This was a message, a deliberate deviation, a taunt. The killer wasn't simply repeating history. They were evolving, adapting, perhaps even mocking the previous failure to identify their signature. The meticulousness wasn't just in the tableau, but in the subtle change within it. You've given me a lead. Don't do anything stupid, Seth. You're a ghost out here. Some ghosts hunt, you murmured, already sifting through the old files with renewed intensity, your eyes now scanning for patterns of absence as much as presence. The labyrinth had indeed called you back, and this time you would not get lost. You would find the phantom. It was a rhythm, that soft electric purr, a counterpoint to the rustle of brittle files under your touch. Your fingers, once adept at coaxing confessions and tracing the invisible lines of motive, now moved with a different purpose. You were hunting for ghosts, yes, but more precisely for their shadows, the patterns of absence. The files from the old case, the one that had consumed your reputation and exiled you to the self-imposed wilderness, lay scattered across the scarred wooden table. You remembered every grainy photograph, every meticulously typed report, every dead-end lead. But now, you sought not what was present, but what was conspicuously missing. A witness statement that should have been there, a forensic detail glossed over, a timeline that felt too neat, too perfectly aligned. The killer, you now suspected, wasn't just a master of presence, but of calculated omission. They didn't just leave their mark, they erased yours. Hours bled into a seamless continuum of yellowed pages and phantom whispers. The sun, a molten coin outside the reinforced windows, dipped towards the horizon, painting the arid landscape in hues of bruised violet and burning orange. Still, you scoured, your gaze sharpening, your mind a crucible forging connections from disparate fragments. A small, almost imperceptible tear in the binding of a particular file caught your eye, the file pertaining to the first victim. A quiet scholar whose life had been meticulously catalogued, save for a single, perplexing lacuna. Her daily journal, a constant companion according to her family, had vanished. Not stolen, not misplaced, simply gone from the inventory. An absence, a sharp rapping, incongruous and jarring against the desert's quietude, fractured your concentration. You froze, every muscle tensing. No one knew this place. No one showed. The sound came again, firmer this time, from the heavy steel door. Through the peephole, a figure stood, silhouetted against the fading light. A delivery driver, impossibly, holding a small, unmarked package. His face was obscured by a wide-brimmed hat, his posture stiff, almost robotic. Hesitation warred with a prickle of unease. This was no ordinary delivery. You opened the door a crack, the scent of dust and something faintly metallic, ozone perhaps, wafting in. The driver said nothing, merely extended the package, his gloved hand unmoving. You took it, the weight surprisingly substantial. He turned without a word, walked back to a nondescript sedan, and drove away, leaving only a plume of dust in his wake. You placed the package on the table, next to the scattered files. It was wrapped in plain brown paper, sealed with a single wax impression, a broken hourglass. Your breath hitched. The symbol was familiar. Agonizingly so. It had been etched into the final resting place of the scholar, a detail only the investigating officers and the killer would have known, a detail deliberately omitted from public reports. Your fingers, now trembling slightly, tore at the paper. Inside, nestled on a bed of black velvet, lay a pocket watch. Not just any pocket watch. This one was old, its silver casing tarnished, its crystal cracked, and its hands were frozen, perpetually pointing to a specific time, 11:17. Etched in elegant, looping script were the words, "To Seth, time waits for no man, and merely observes." A profound, suffocating silence descended, broken only by the persistent, oblivious hum of the money counter. This wasn't a random act. This wasn't a taunt meant for the world. This was for you. The pocket watch, an echo of the scholar's missing journal of the passage of time, was a direct, personal indictment. 11:17. What did it mean? A day, a time, a reference to a specific moment in your life? You remembered a detail, suddenly vivid and horrifying from the initial reports of the scholar's death. Her antique grandfather clock, a family heirloom, had been found shattered, its hands frozen at precisely 11:17 p.m. But now, seeing it mirrored in the pocket watch, inscribed with your name, you understood. The killer wasn't merely returning. The phantom killer wasn't just a shadow from your past. They were standing in your present, holding a broken piece of your future. The game had just become excruciatingly personal. You were no longer just an observer, a disgraced former detective sifting through ashes. You were the target, and the clock, broken and mocking, had just started ticking. The profound, suffocating silence still pressed in, a heavy shroud woven from the desert air and the fresh horror. This wasn't a random act. You knew, with a chilling certainty that settled deep in your bones. This wasn't a taunt meant for the world. This was for you. Stacks of bills, crisp and green, rose like miniature monuments to illicit gain. The victim, a figure you recognized from old files, lay amidst them, a grotesque centerpiece. This wasn't just a copycat. This was a continuation, a mocking echo across the years. Sirens, distant at first, then growing sharper, tore through the quiet. They approached with the urgency of a predator, pulling you from your solitary vigil. Soon, the desert's safe house was a hive of controlled activity. The lead detective, a figure of clipped efficiency, strode in, his eyes sweeping the scene with practiced detachment. He was a man of procedure, of facts. His initial assessment, you could already tell, would be grounded in the obvious. Seth Corbin. His voice was flat, devoid of surprise. "You're a fast one." His gaze lingered on the money counter, then on the victim. "Looks like our friend here finally got what was coming." Known associate of the Sand Rattler's outfit, moved a lot of paper. A forensics technician, silent and methodical, began to bag and tag the location points to a debt or a double cross. "We've got a known operator, a brute named the Hammer, who's been muscling in on their territory. Likes to make a statement." You watched, a phantom limb aching with the desire to intervene, to point out the nuances, the subtle disharmony in this violent symphony. But you were just Seth Corbin, a ghost haunting the periphery of a world that had cast you out. You let the lead detective build his narrative, a logical, albeit simplistic, chain of events leading to a plausible, violent criminal. The Hammer. It fit the money, the location, the raw brutality. It was a good story, a tidy explanation, and it was wrong. Your eyes, honed by years of seeing what others missed, traced the periphery of the scene. The lead detective and his team focused on the sheer volume of cash, the victim's connections, the blunt force trauma. They saw a cut and dry case of organized crime violence. But you saw something else. Near the victim's outstretched, stiffening hand, tucked partially beneath a discarded, empty money band, you noticed it. A small, delicate thing, barely visible against the rough concrete floor. It was a paper crane, intricately folded from a single dollar bill. Its tiny, sharp creases spoke of meticulous care, of an almost obsessive attention to detail. You remembered, not a crane, not exactly. A small, carefully arranged cluster of pebbles at one scene. A single, perfectly preserved wildflower at another. Details so minor, so easily dismissed as incidental, that only you had ever truly registered their deliberate placement, their unsettling resonance. They were flourishes, the killer's personal stamp, a silent taunt. The lead detective was moving on, directing the technician to focus on fingerprinting the money counter, to collect samples from the victim's clothing. Get a warrant for the hammer's known dens. You gestured subtly with your chin toward the crane. He followed your gaze, his brow furrowing. A dollar bill probably fell out of his pocket, or the perp dropped it. He dismissed it with a wave of his hand, already turning back to the more relevant evidence. Bag it if you want, but it's probably nothing. Nothing. The word hung in the air, a testament to their blindness. You knelt, careful not to disturb anything, and studied the tiny paper bird. The folds were impossibly neat, the edges sharp. It wasn't just a dropped bill, it was a deliberate, calculated placement. A calling card. The artistry spoke of patience, of a mind that savored its work, not a crude enforcer rushing a kill. The hammer was a blunt instrument. This was a surgeon's touch. The meticulousness, the subtle, almost artistic signature. It wasn't the hammer. It was the other one. The phantom. The one who had vanished, leaving you with nothing but ghosts and a ruined career. He hadn't returned. He had merely resurfaced. The official investigation was already veering wildly off course, chasing a ghost of another kind. They would pursue the hammer, build their case, and in their focused pursuit, they would leave the true predator free to hunt again. The weight of this realization settled on your shoulders, heavier than any physical burden. You were alone in this, a solitary sentinel in the desert safe house, holding a fragile paper bird that screamed a truth no one else could hear. The tension was a living thing, coiling in your gut, a desperate urgency that demanded action. Even as the world around you moved in blissful ignorance, you had to catch him. And you had to do it before he claimed another victim, before he twisted the last vestiges of your life into another one of his sick, beautiful arrangements. Its crisp edges, sharper than any ordinary dropped bill, spoke of patience, of purpose. Artistry, you had thought, a chilling word for something found at a scene of such stark brutality. The desert wind, a dry whisper, seemed to urge you onward, away from the lingering specters of the crime scene. You drove, the old pickup rattling over the cracked asphalt until the horizon stretched, unbroken, into the hazy distance. Your destination, a solitary structure tucked into a forgotten crevice of the land, appeared as a mirage. Stacks of old case files, thick with dust and brittle with age, lay alongside fresh printouts from the recent horror. Photographs, stark and unforgiving, were tacked to a makeshift corkboard, forming a grim tapestry of the killer's work. Your coffee, black and bitter, steamed beside a scattering of notes scrawled in your hurried hand. You laid the tiny avian sculpture flat, your breath held. With the precision of a surgeon, you began to unfold it, reverently, carefully, each crease releasing a faint, papery sigh. It wasn't just a bill, not a random 10 or 20. It was a $100 bill. Yes, but an older series, specifically from the late 1990s, the kind that had been quietly phased out years ago after a notorious counterfeiting ring had briefly flooded the market. A bill that, for a time, had been viewed with suspicion, its value subtly, momentarily undermined. Devalued! The word echoed in the quiet hum of the money counter. You stared at the bill, then at the photos of the new victim, their life extinguished, their future rendered worthless. The elegance of the origami now seemed less like art and more like a cruel, precise mockery. Your fingers, calloused from years of gripping steering wheels and crime scene tape, now delicately turned pages yellowed with time. Hours bled into each other. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, but you barely noticed. Your eyes scanned for anomalies, for anything out of place that had been dismissed as irrelevant. All men who had built empires on the shaky foundations of others' misfortunes. Then, a detail, once dismissed as a mere curiosity, snagged your attention. A single, tarnished silver dollar coin, dated 1804. Found clutched in the victim's stiff hand. At the time, it had been catalogued as a personal possession, perhaps a good luck charm. But now, the $100 bill unfolded before you. The pieces clicked into place with a sickening thud. The 1804 draped bust silver dollar. Not just any coin, a specific, infamous specimen, a known counterfeit. One of a batch that had rocked the numismatic world decades ago, revealing a vast network of forgery that had devalued entire collections. It wasn't a genuine piece of history. It was a beautifully crafted lie, a symbol of lost worth, of inherent fraud. The paper bird, made from a decommissioned $100 bill, Once legitimate, then compromised, its value questioned. The silver dollar, a magnificent forgery, presented as real, then exposed, its value a cruel illusion. This wasn't just a killer. This was an accountant of grievances, a collector of lost value. The victims weren't random. They were chosen not just for their sins, but for their connection to the devaluation of wealth, of trust, of human potential. They had either profited from a system that cheapened others' lives or were directly responsible for the collapse of something once deemed valuable. They were leaving behind symbols of financial decay, of compromised worth, of the shattered illusion of value. The killer was exposing, punishing, and mocking those who traded in such deceit. The realization was a bitter pill, sharp and metallic on your tongue. The phantom killer had a code, and you had just begun to decipher its terrifying script. Artistry, you had thought, a chilling word for something found at a scene of such severance. Your fingers traced the slight texture of the card stock, a subtle, almost pearlescent sheen that caught the light in an unusual way. It wasn't standard office paper. This was specialized, a heavyweight craft stock. You remembered it dimly from an old case, a forgery ring that had used unique materials for their counterfeit documents. They'd sourced their paper from a small, almost artisanal printing outfit tucked away in a forgotten industrial stretch on the city's fringe. A place where the scent of ink and aged paper clung to the very air, where machines groaned with the weight of decades. A name surfaced, like a fragment of forgotten melody, the Labyrinthine Press. An ironic, perhaps prophetic, moniker for a place you now felt compelled to revisit. Seth, you knew this feeling. It was the same pull that had once defined your life, the same current that had dragged you under. The drive was long, the landscape shifting from arid scrub to the skeletal remains of forgotten industry. The desert's vastness gave way to corrugated iron and crumbling brick, a stark testament to economic tides. You parked the borrowed utility vehicle several blocks away, a faded, nondescript shape against the encroaching dusk, and began your approach on foot. The air here was heavy with the ghost of commerce, a metallic tang mixed with damp earth and something indefinably stale. Windows were mostly shattered panes, gaping maw-like. A chain-link fence, rusted and torn, offered little resistance. You slipped through a gap, your movements practiced, silent. The ground crunched under your boots. Broken glass, desiccated leaves, the detritus of neglect. Inside, the silence was profound, broken only by the drip of water somewhere deep within and the distant wail of a city siren, a phantom limb of the world you'd left behind. Towering presses, rusted and inert, stood like forgotten giants, their gears frozen in mid-turn. The scent of old ink was still potent, a ghost of industrious days. Your eyes scanned the vast space, seeking any sign, any deviation. You moved through the cavernous main hall, past the silent machines, towards what would have been the administrative offices. Not moonlight, not street lamp. It was deeper, warmer, a living light. You pressed yourself against a cold metal column, drawing a breath that tasted of decay and apprehension. The light emanated from a small, partitioned office at the far end, partially obscured by stacks of old paper reams. You advanced, slow, deliberate, each step measured, the crunch underfoot now a conscious effort to minimize. As you neared, a low murmur became audible, a voice, raspy with age or disuse, speaking to itself. You risked a glance through a cracked pane of the office door. An old man sat hunched over a workbench, illuminated by a single bare bulb. His face was a roadmap of wrinkles. His hands, gnarled and stained with ink, were meticulously arranging small, intricate pieces of what looked like metal type. This had to be the proprietor, the last bastion of the Labyrinthine Press. You pushed the door open, a soft groan of hinges betraying your presence. The old man's had snapped up his eyes watery and sharp, fixing on you with an immediate animalistic suspicion. He didn't flinch, didn't cry out. He simply watched you, his hands freezing over the metal type. Looking for something, his voice was a dry rasp, surprisingly steady. You stepped fully into the room, letting him see you, your posture calm, but your senses alight. Just curious. Heard this place used to print some unique stuff. Annoyance, we print many things. Used to. He gestured vaguely at the silent machines outside. Not much demand for bespoke anymore. Everything's digital. His eyes, however, kept returning to the bird. This paper, you pressed, it's specific, not off the shelf, and the folds they're precise. Like a signature. He pushed himself up slowly, his movements stiff, but his eyes never left yours. You a collector of paper birds, then? Or something else? His right hand drifted, almost imperceptibly, towards a heavy-looking lead mallet resting beside the type tray. I'm looking for answers, you stated, your voice low, even. Answers about where this paper comes from, and who folded it. A thin, humorless smile touched his lips. Answers are expensive, young man, and sometimes they're dangerous. His hand closed around the mallet, its weight substantial. The air thickened, charged with unspoken threat. He wasn't just an old printer. He was a sentinel. I'm prepared for that. You countered, your gaze unwavering. You noticed a small, leather-bound ledger half hidden beneath a stack of old proofs on his desk. Its cover was worn, its edges soft. A detail tugged at your memory, the meticulous nature of the killer, the precise record-keeping. He took a step towards you, the mallet now held loosely, but ready. Then you're a fool. Leave this place. There's nothing for you here but dust and rust. As he moved, his sleeve brushed against the desk, and a corner of the ledger shifted. Your breath hitched. The pattern. It was almost identical to a recurring motif found etched into a personal item at the last crime scene, a detail dismissed as mere decoration at the time. Your eyes darted from the box to his face, then back to the ledger, then the mallet. The proprietor saw your gaze, saw the realization dawn. He lunged, not with the mallet, but with surprising speed, aiming to block your view of the desk. You reacted instinctively, a defensive reflex honed by years of street-level confrontation. You sidestepped, pushing past him, your hands sweeping across the desk, grabbing the ledger. The mallet whistled past your ear as he swung wildly. The wooden box remained, now fully exposed. You glimpsed inside it as you spun away. A collection of small, intricate metal stamps, each bearing a unique, delicate symbol. Not type, you realized, but seals. Seals for branding. The proprietor roared, a sound of pure rage and desperation, lunging again. You burst out of the office, ledger clutched tight. The symbols on the stamps burned into your mind, the geometric pattern of the box screaming its silent connection. Behind you, the heavy thud of the mallet striking the door frame echoed through the vast, silent factory. You didn't look back. Your breath hitches, a sharp intake of the dry, recycled air. Your fingers, hesitant, pushed the heady ledger fully aside. There, bathed in the anemic glow of the single bare bulb, lies the small, dark wooden box. Its surface, smooth and cool, is a tapestry of intricate carvings, interlocking triangles, a stylized serpent winding through them, its head a sharp, angular point. The pattern, it is unmistakable. The recurring motif, the whisper from the past, etched into victims' belongings, subtle, almost missed, now screams from this quiet, unassuming object. The signature. You lift the box. It feels heavier than its size suggests, a density born of secrets. The wood is old, worn smooth by countless touches, or perhaps just time. No lock. No clasp, just a meticulously fitted lid. A deep breath expands your chest, holds, then releases, a shaky exhalation. With a deliberate slowness, you pry open the lid. The resistance is minimal, a soft pop of aged wood releasing its seal. A tarnished silver locket, unclasped, its two halves splayed open. Beside it, a single, yellowed newspaper clipping, folded precisely, its creases sharp despite its age. You reach for the locket first. The metal is cool against your palm, the intricate filigree dulled by years. Your gaze falls to the miniature photograph encased within. It is old, sepia-toned, faded at the edges. And then, the world tilts. It is you, Seth, younger, perhaps in your early 20s, a ghost from a life you barely remember. You are standing beside a woman, her arm linked through yours, a genuine smile on her face, a carefree light in her eyes. The one whose unsolved murder became the first nail in the coffin of your career. And then, your eyes track further into the background of the image. Standing slightly behind her, partially obscured by your shoulder, is a figure. A face, just visible enough through the haze of time and the grainy print. The sharp jawline, the familiar set of the eyes, a slight, almost imperceptible smirk. Is the colleague, the one who gave you access to this very safe house. The one who always seemed to be one step behind, or perhaps one step ahead. A tremor runs through your hand, threatening to drop the locket. You force your gaze away from the locket, your eyes snapping to the newspaper clipping. Your fingers, numb, unfold the brittle paper. It's from a local daily, decades old. It's masked at a relic of a bygone era. The headline, stark and bold, speaks of a promotion within the police department for a promising young officer. Your eyes scan the brief article, searching for a name, a confirmation, and there it is, the officer named. The article mentions his connection to a family tragedy years prior, a miscarriage of justice that drove him towards law enforcement. A cryptic reference, a throwaway line, now echoing with sinister intent. The geometric pattern on the box, the serpent. It all coalesces with sickening clarity. The colleague, he wasn't helping you, he was orchestrating you. He knew you'd find this, eventually. This entire journey, a twisted game, a meticulously constructed path leading you to this moment, this desert safe house, this revelation. He blames you for the original case, for something related to the first victim or his family tragedy. The miscarriage of justice mentioned in the article must be the key, the spark that ignited this decades-long firestorm of murder. He blames you, or the system you represented, for something that happened to his family. and the first victim was connected, perhaps even the catalyst. He never left, he just changed roles, always lurking, always watching, patiently constructing his legacy of retribution. A sudden, subtle creak from the floorboards above. You freeze, the locket and clipping still clutched in your hands, their weight suddenly immense. You are not alone. He knew you'd come here. He planned this. The air grows heavy, thick with unspoken presence. Then, a faint, distinct scraping sound from the outer door lock of the desert safe house. A key turning, slowly, deliberately. He is here. You drop the items back into the box, shoving it clumsily under the ledger, praying it goes unnoticed. Your hand, trembling, instinctively goes to the worn grip of the pistol tucked into your waistband, the cold metal a small comfort. Your eyes dart around the cramped room, searching for an exit, a weapon, anything. The game has changed. You are no longer the hunter. You are the hunted, and the killer is finally within reach. You know his face, and he knows you know. Its intricate carvings, interlocking triangles, feel cool beneath your fingertips, a silent language etched into the aged wood. The money counter's rhythmic drone, a dry, mechanical breath, fills the space, a stark counterpoint to the sudden, profound quiet in your mind. This box, you realize, is not merely a container. It is a reliquary of secrets, a fatal piece of the mosaic. You pry the latch. It yields with a soft click, a sound swallowed by the desert's vast silence pressing against the thin walls. Your gaze snags on a tarnished silver locket, its surface scratched, the chain broken. Beside it, a cluster of dried wildflowers, their colors muted to an almost sepia tone, pressed flat between brittle pages torn from a small child's storybook. A single, small, tarnished brass button, the kind from a specific uniform, gleams faintly under the bare bulb. And finally, folded meticulously, a yellowed photograph. Your fingers tremble as you lift the photograph. It depicts a group of children, perhaps 10 or 12, gathered around a youthful instructor, all smiling, bathed in the harsh sunlight of what looks like a summer camp. Your eyes scan the faces, then freeze. One of the children, a boy with wide, earnest eyes, stands slightly apart, a shadow of unease already clinging to his small frame. And the instructor, the face, younger, less worn, yet unmistakably the same colleague who had subtly steered you away from this particular thread, dismissing it as irrelevant. The realization hits with the force of a physical blow. The brass button matches the uniform of the camp counselors. A floorboard creaks behind you, a sound too deliberate to be the desert wind. You spin, your hand instinctively dropping to the weight at your hip, but your movement is too slow. Seth, a voice, calm and measured, slices through the money counter's hum. Always the detective, aren't you? Always digging. It is the colleague, standing in the doorway, a silhouette against the faint moonlight filtering through the dusty window. There's no surprise in their eyes, only a weary resolve. In their hand, a short-barreled revolver, glinting dully. It was you, you breathe, the words tasting like ash. The interlocking triangles on the box, my innocence, my future, and your system, Seth. Your precious justice system, it did nothing. It buried the truth, just like it tried to bury me. Their gaze drifts to the locket in the box, a flicker of raw pain in their eyes, quickly masked. That locket belonged to my sister. The flowers from her grave, the book, the last story I ever read to her. Their voice hardens. They called it an accident, a tragic disappearance. But I saw what happened. I saw who happened. And when you, the great detective, couldn't find them, when you let them walk free, I knew I had to finish what you started. The victims, they were all connected to the camp, weren't they? You deduce, the pieces locking into place with sickening clarity. The counselors, the administrators, the ones who covered it up, and their children, a debt unpaid. You see, Seth, I'm not just avenging my sister, I'm correcting history. And you became a loose end. Too close, too persistent, even in your disgrace. The money counter continues its relentless count, a soundtrack to this grim confession. The new crime, it was a message, wasn't it? To lure me back, to show me you were still out there, finishing your work. A little nudge, the colleague confirms, a faint, humorless smile playing on their lips. I knew you wouldn't resist, and now you found my sanctuary, my final accounting. A pity. They gesture with the revolver toward the humming machine. This is it, Seth, the last of their ill-gotten gains, the final proof of their corruption, converted to my freedom. And you are the last obstacle. You glance at the revolver, then back at the box, the evidence of decades of pain and calculated vengeance. The air crackles with unspoken threats. The desert safe house, once a haven for the killer, is now a stage for your final confrontation. Your career, your reputation, your very life, all hinge on the next breath, the next move. You are trapped, the humming of the money counter echoing the frantic beat of your own heart. This is not a negotiation. This is the end. And you, Seth Corbin, are ready to write it. Your hand, trembling not with fear but with the sheer force of adrenaline, still clenches the cold steel of the revolver. The killer, now disarmed, a dark silhouette against the stark desert light filtering through the high windows, stands motionless, a strange, unnerving calm settling over their features. The box, spilling its gruesome secrets of decades long beyond torment, lies open between you, a silent testament to a phantom's reign. A guttural sound escapes your throat, a mix of exhaustion and triumph. You had anticipated a fight, a desperate lunge, a final futile act of defiance. Instead, after a brief, brutal struggle that left you with a searing pain in your ribs and a slick warmth on your temple, they had simply stopped, collapsed onto their knees, not in surrender, but in a profound, almost serene acceptance. It ends, you rasp, your voice raw, tasting like sand. The killer lifts their head slowly, their eyes, devoid of any discernible emotion, fix on yours. You push past it, the image of those you couldn't save flashing behind your eyes. Your gaze sweeps over the scattered contents of the box, the dried flowers, the faded photographs, the carefully catalogued newspaper clippings. The journey here was long, arduous, and clandestine, but the coordinates you sent, a desperate gamble, would bring them. A faint, distant siren, a thin wail against the vast, indifferent desert, begins to register. It grows slowly, steadily, a rising tide of sound that promises the end of this solitary vigil. The killer hears it too, a slight twitch at the corner of their mouth, almost imperceptible. They won't understand. The killer murmurs, their voice barely audible over the increasing wail. They never do. This is the reveal, not a confession of guilt. It's the final, horrifying piece of the puzzle, a mind so utterly detached, so convinced of its own logic, that societal norms of morality simply do not apply. The lack of remorse is not an act, it is their core truth. The siren blossoms into a full-throated roar, closer now, echoing off the corrugated metal walls of the safe house. Dust motes dance in the shafts of light, suddenly more vibrant, more alive. You lower the revolver, your grip loosening, the weight of it suddenly immense. You've done what you set out to do. The phantom has a face, and that face is now staring at you, unblinking. The heavy steel door of the safe house groans open, letting in a blinding rush of sunlight and a flurry of activity. The first figure through is a uniformed officer, weapon raised, followed swiftly by the detective, his face grim, his eyes scanning the scene. Their movements are swift, practiced. Seth, the detective barks, his voice tight with urgency. His gaze takes in the killer on their knees, the box of evidence, the revolver in your hand. It's done, you say, the words catching in your throat. You gesture weakly toward the killer. They're here. All of it. The safe house fills quickly. They move with efficient precision, securing the killer, their hands bound, their movements surprisingly compliant. The detective kneels beside the open box, his eyes widening as he takes in the decades of meticulous planning laid bare. You feel a hand on your shoulder. The detective, his expression is unreadable, a mixture of relief, shock, and a grudging respect. You found them, Seth. The pain in your ribs flares, a dull, persistent ache. Your temple throbs, sticky to the touch. You taste blood, metallic and sharp. You slump against a rough-hewn table, the world tilting precariously. The faces around you blur, the voices become a distant drone. The killer is led away, their footsteps echoing briefly before fading. There is no dramatic confession, no last-minute struggle, just a quiet, resolute stride into custody. The killer never looks back. The hum of the money counter finally stops. Someone has unplugged it. The weight of years, of guilt, of relentless pursuit, begins to settle on your shoulders. The justice is served, yes, but the cost is a chasm within you waiting to be filled. The journey back from this precipice, you realize, has only just begun. The rough-hewn surface against your back is no longer a comfort, but a reminder of the raw edge of survival. You slump, not from defeat, but from the sudden, heavy cessation of the chase. The world, which had been a blur of pursuit and instinct, now snaps into stark, painful focus. Your ribs scream a protest with every shallow breath, a dull, insistent throb joining the rhythmic pulse at your temple. The machine's insistent purr, a soft, mechanical snore, is the only sound breaking the vast, indifferent silence of the desert night. It stacks crisp, new notes into neat piles, a stark, almost absurd counterpoint to the visceral chaos that brought you here. The air, cool and dry, carries the faint scent of dust and old canvas. You are not alone. The detective, whose face had been a mask of professional skepticism for so long, now watches you with an unreadable gaze. Beside them, a younger officer meticulously logs the contents of several duffel bags, each bursting with bundles of the same currency the counter now processes. This, you realize, is the killer's cash. Their meticulous planning extended even to their financial escape, now meticulously catalogued and claimed. It was the architect, you murmur, the words a gravelly rasp in the quiet space, all along, not just the blueprints for buildings, but for lives, and their undoing. The detective nods slowly, a concession you've waited years to see. The structural engineer, you mean, the one whose firm handled the renovation renovations on the old dock warehouse. The same warehouse where our first victim was found years ago. The details, they were all there, hidden in plain sight in his files, in the very angles of his designs. A cold clarity settles over you, sharp as a desert wind. The missing pieces click into place, forming a complete, horrifying mosaic. The meticulousness wasn't just a signature, it was a professional habit twisted. The killer, the engineer as you now think of them, had built their revenge with the same precision they applied to steel and concrete. They had used their knowledge of structures, of weaknesses and stresses, to craft a decades-long vendetta, each victim a meticulously chosen symbolic pillar in their edifice of vengeance. The patterns, you continue, your voice gaining strength as the truth solidifies. The way the bodies were positioned, the specific items left behind, they weren't random. They were all allusions to his father's work, the projects that were unjustly shut down, the ones that ruined him. Each murder was a reconstruction of a perceived failure, a dismantling of the lives of those he blamed for his father's downfall. The new crime, his father's original project log, annotated with names and dates, cross-referenced with newspaper clippings of their debts. You were right about the motive, Seth. It was personal. You remember the seemingly innocuous conversations, the way their eyes would linger on certain architectural details, the subtle shift in their voice when discussing structural integrity. You had dismissed it as professional eccentricity then. Now, it was a scream. It's the killer's ill-gotten gains, money siphoned from shell corporations, payment for ghost projects, funds meant to finance a quiet disappearance after their final, grand act. It was instrumental, the detective says, a rare note of respect in their tone. Without your insights into the older cases, the connections would have remained obscured. You saw the ghost in the machine, a partial restoration, not a full exoneration, not a return to the badge, but a quiet acknowledgement of your worth, your unique, damaged insight. It's a bomb, a fragile piece settling over the raw wounds of your past. The weight of your disgrace lifts just a fraction, enough to breathe. You push yourself up, wincing as your ribs protest. The world still spins faintly, but your mind is clear. The hunt is over. The phantom has a face, a name, and a motive. The labyrinth has yielded its minotaur. What now? You ask, the question hanging in the dusty air. The detective shrugs, a gesture that holds both finality and a hint of something more. Boss, paperwork. For you, that's your call. Let you have a clean slate, Seth. Or, at least, a less tarnished one. You look around the safehouse, the stark, temporary nature of it mirroring your own existence. You walk over to the small, grimy window, peering out into the vast, inky blackness of the desert. The ordeal has left its mark, etched deep into your bones, a new kind of scar alongside the old ones. You will always see the hidden patterns, the subtle cracks in the facade. The world will never be quite as simple, quite as innocent again. But perhaps that's not entirely a curse. A new purpose begins to coalesce, indistinct but compelling. You might not wear a uniform, but the detective in you, the one who sees what others miss, is undeniably, irrevocably alive. The portable money counter hums its final notes, its task complete. Just as yours has finally, truly begun.